So, welcome to the Brave Enough Show. I'm so honored to have you. You are somebody, Kathy, that I have really admired from afar from a long time. And I love what you have put out into the world. I've always been like a secret admirer. And then last year, I was able to go to one of your Institute for Physician Wellness coaching retreats. And you are one of those people that is even better in person. And it was
Oh,
like sometimes you admire people and then you meet them and maybe they're a little different than you thought, but you were right on, like right on what I had in my brain and the way you talk and the way you led the retreat and just creating beautiful well spaces for people who work in medicine to feel themselves and really feel safe. And so when I was putting together this season and thinking of who I wanted to have on the show, that is someone doing something different and doing something unique and following their own kind of calling, I thought of you. So I'm so honored that you
yeah.
are here.
Thank you. That's such kind words. Thank you for having me. And it truly is such an honor to do this work. I mean, to support women physicians and have this impact on our colleagues, on all of us, and then the impact on medicine and the ripple effect of the impact on our communities and all of that. It just is to be part of this movement in medicine over the last 10 years. It's just been incredible. So I feel like I feel so lucky.
Yes, yes, I totally get that. And I understand when you are helping people who heal people and you're helping people who do very human work, there is a sense of how blessed am I that I get to be in a position to help people who help so many other people, right? And to make sure that
100%.
those people are taking care of themselves because they're such an important part of the whole structure. And so I just love what you do, and I love that in a world that is hustle, 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 go, 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 that is not at all who you are. Like you have not bought into this and you're successful in that. So I think there's such an important lesson there that you represent, Kathy, to so many, not just women and not just physicians, but people in our world who are just on this treadmill of like to be successful, you have to get on the hustle sled. You have to never get off. You have to push, 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 do more, more, more. And you've really taken a very different approach of letting go of the hustle. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit and how that became kind of your brand, so to speak?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really think of it as my brand. It feels very feminist to me. It feels very empowering to me to um, kind of question the stories that were handed down, question the assumptions. And I show up how I show up. And if that means it's not in a hustly way, it's because that doesn't align with who I am. And that's not how I want to live. It's not what I want to create in the world. And so this is it. This is who I am, and this is how I do things. So it's funny you say that though, because I think my normal and natural rhythm is like a hummingbird. It's just like blah, 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 just so high energy. And so it's so funny. I've had other people as I'm leading meditations and leading retreats and things, people will comment, they're like, you just seem so grounded and calm. And I just have to laugh, like, are you serious? Because I just feel like I'm, hummingbird energy. Um, which in some ways is connected to hustle, but some ways not. I do think that like we so often we get handed stories and then we take them on as if this is how we need to live. And I think it's important in every aspect of our life and to question and ask, well, do I need to hustle and why? And where and when? And does that align with who I am and what my values are and what I want to put out in the world? So
That's so
yeah.
good what you just said about we get handed stories. I'm curious because I'm sure that you are a coach, you coach high achieving women. Similar to me, you're coaching people who are like operating at a level that is just hummingbird level. I love this new term. I'm going to steal that and give you credit. when they feel like they've lost themselves, right? And they're pushing to keep everybody else in their life afloat, and they're doing it, and they do it really, really well. What is something that how do you come at them from this position of like, I get it, I have hummingbird energy, I know what you're trying to do, but the answer is, let's take it back to, what is this narrative? Is there a narrative is there a story that you're believing? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure, I'm happy to. And I think so much of it is about skill development. We um, developing an awareness of ourselves and what our brain might be telling us, what thoughts are coming up, and just becoming a curious observer of those thoughts. Like, why is that coming up? What's that about? Um, Becoming curious about our behaviors. Well, why am I doing that? Right? Why do I automatically just go and begin to overfunction? Why, especially for those of us who are high achievers or in leadership positions where there's this like automatic response to, oh, sure,
Mhm.
I'll take that on and I can do that and I can do that. And it's like just so automatic. So developing awareness about not only what our inner stories are, our inner narrative and that mental chatter, and getting curious also about our behaviors, about what emotions, what triggers are coming up, what's in our body. So developing that self-awareness is key. And I don't think that any of us can do that, particularly as a coach. I can't do that for someone. All I can do is help as they are developing that inner sense, that inner awareness, and then getting curious about it and holding that with compassion, not judgment, not shame, but just this beautiful compassion. It's like, well, what's that about? And how is that showing up in our lives? How is that serving us? Is that what we want, or not? And then here's the great part where, once we become aware of it, um, and meet it with compassion and get curious about it, meet it with compassion, then there's this radical acceptance, right? It's like, okay, that's what's here. And now what? And that's the really fun part, because when you open up to the yes and, then it's the world's wide open. It's like, okay, now that I'm onto this, it's like, what do I really want to be doing? How do I really want to be showing up? What do I want that mental story to be? That's the really fun part. So,
I love that. I love that one of the things that you are talking about is this self-awareness, and then I heard you say compassion, self-compassion, and then self-acceptance. And it's not that we can't change through that process or improve ourselves. It's not that we can't become something we aren't, or we can identify things that we need to tweak or we need to just even accept, right? Um, but it's not like, what you're talking about is being, not doing.
yes.
And when I coach so many women, they come to me and they're like, what do I need to do? Like, give me homework. Give me the thing to do.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, your first homework is to spend 15 minutes every morning in solitude. And they're like, no, 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 no. I'm really, really busy. I'm burned out. I need to figure out how to fix this. And I'm like,
Yep.
yes, it's self-awareness. Like, we got to go inside. And I want you just to get curious of, how does it feel to sit for 15 minutes without your phone and not checking the next task and not doing the next thing? And a lot of people, they don't want to do that. Like, it's so anxiety provoking to sit with yourself. And I have been there. I'm not speaking from a place of judgment, because this was me for several years when I burned out a decade ago. I did not want to be by myself. I
No.
did not want to be alone in my thoughts, because it was so much easier to just keep going and like do the next thing. And so, can you talk a little bit about your upcoming book, which I'm so excited to introduce to this audience, because my audience is going to love it. Whatever you do, when you stop listening to this, go and get on the list for her book. It's called Done with Grit, on walking ourselves home. And it kind of flips this idea. I'm sure you talk about self-acceptance. I'm sure you talk about compassion, getting self-aware. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I'm happy to. It's been such a joy in writing this book, and I realize as I'm working on it, and it's not out, it's not published, it's coming out, it's not out yet. But I realize as I am writing it that I have been writing it for 30 years. And I actually,
Mm.
while I was in graduate school, I went to my first career was in physical therapy, and during that time, I also went to graduate school in philosophy. So this curious brain, I think, is something I've had all along. And during that time, I wrote the first draft of this book. And that was like before medicine, before kids, before everything, which
Wow.
kind of cracks me up. And so there's been this theme of that it's so easy for us to just keep going. I think you were really onto something there where you talk about it's just easier to stay busy, to keep going, keep going, keep pushing, rather than get still and get quiet and face some of the stuff we're trying to not face. And from a trauma informed perspective, it makes sense that we do that, right? It can be like it's so uncomfortable. You mentioned sitting 15 minutes without a phone, sitting 15 minutes and just being present with ourselves. Um, it can be terrifying. It can be triggering. It can be just miserable. Who wants to do that, right? Especially when we
Yeah.
could go pop on our phone or grab something to eat or to, like distract ourselves with the million things that are right here in our lives. So developing that ability, that capacity to be with self, I think it's huge. It's such a superpower. And then meeting that self with compassion and gentleness, because so many of us when we do slow down have so much shame around that. We have so much
Mhm.
judgment about how things should be and how we're behind, and just the mental chatter that goes along with that. I fortunately stumbled into meditation decades ago. I was an undergrad. My first semester in undergrad, we were required to take a health class, and health 101, whatever it was. And in that class I'd learned about the mind body connection. They didn't call it mindfulness because it was a time and a place where like that would be way too far out there, just we didn't use those words.
Yeah.
We talked about biofeedback and about how people who uh, had skills and noticing the mind body connection were less likely to get sick. And here as a freshman in college, I'm like, well, yeah, I don't want to get sick. Let me learn about that. And through that was kind of like the beginning of me learning about mindfulness and developing this lifelong meditation practice. And I can tell you, there has been such a love-hate relationship with it for decades where I don't want to sit still with my thoughts. I've been on meditation retreats and mindfulness retreats where, and some of my mindfulness training, where honestly, it's like all I wanted to do is run away. It was like the most painful thing I have ever done. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So
Yeah.
I get that that it's not our natural impulse, but it is a part of the key. So the book is really about when I talk about done with grit, I think all of us, I know for me, I am like a superstar when it comes to grit. And I thought that all of that, like stick to itness, just that incredible
Mhm.
level, like excessive grit, has gotten me to a certain place in life, as many of us in medicine. But there's also a point where what is good is too much. And really looking at where's that line? Where am I over functioning? and and taking on what's not mine to carry. And what does that look like physically? Like what am I doing that is not mine to carry, but also kind of the emotional state of things. It's like what is not mine to carry from that perspective as well. Really
Oh,
letting
that
people own what is theirs to own.
okay, that is such a good question, is what is not mine to carry? I love that. Like, I think it's so important to note that we are all living in a very busy world. We have a lot of responsibilities, and having a meditation practice, having a self-awareness practice, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to come at an hour sitting underneath a tree outside listening to birds. It can be, like I do it often at work, in the hospital, when I am in a really stressful, when I'm feeling myself, my sympathetic tone just rising. And I will just escape to the restroom for 3 or 4 minutes, and I will go into the women's locker room and I will do 3 to 5 minutes of mindfulness and getting self aware. And I've talked a little bit about this practice on the podcast before, but I want to make sure I throw that out there because I think sometimes I know when I introduce this to my coaching clients, they'll say, like, you're going to tell me that I have to meditate. I don't have time. I can barely take a shower, And so there's practices that you can do. And then I want to get back to this question, which was so powerful that you just shared. Um, you said, what is not mine to carry? And I think that is a radical question to ask oneself. One of my good friends, who's an amazing coach and author, she always says, busy is the new self-harm.
Yes.
And when she said that to me the first time I heard that, it like shook me to my core. This is one of those questions that kind of just got to me because we often find ourselves carrying things because we can. Maybe we're the most experienced person in the room. Maybe we're the most compassionate person in the room. Maybe we're an empath. Maybe we around someone who we're triggered to be that, to overextend ourselves. And we find ourselves carrying a lot of emotional weight, especially as women. We find ourselves carrying a lot of tasks and duties because nobody's raising their hand or because we know how to do it. We've done it for 20 years. We'll find ourselves doing it again. We find ourselves stepping in and maybe doing the work of other people and carrying a lot of things, like not to mention expectations we place on ourselves. And I know like that is one thing. I turned 50 this year has been so good for, I don't know what it is. It's like this mindset that I'm like, oh, I'm not carrying that anymore. I'm not doing that. I turned 50. This is my new excuse for everything. Oh, I'm 50. I don't do that anymore. Like I've just let go of it. But can you talk a little bit about what, like, when we ask ourselves that question, what if we find ourselves that the answer is we're carrying a lot? We're actually doing a lot of things that we're not supposed to be carrying. What's the answer to that, Kathy? What is the next step?
I'd say when we recognize that, um, again, to meet ourselves with gentleness and compassion. Of course we are, right? We have been socialized to do that. We're really good at it. Some of it is fun. We're better at it. Like we just do it ourselves because we can just get it done, right? And also look at our institutions. They count on us doing that. They count on us over functioning. Medicine relies on physicians and specifically women physicians to carry so much of what is not to carry. And as long as we keep doing that, then the systems are going to allow us to do that. They're never going to say, "Oh no, you've had a tough day. just set that down. I'll take over,"
Yeah,
right?
exactly. We know you
So,
can do all these things, but we're going to take those off your plate and have someone else.
exactly. That's never going to happen. And it's not just at work, it's in our world everywhere. As a parent, just in our society, in our communities. And I think for me, meeting that with some gentleness and some compassion is important because I can get very judgy about it. And it's like, well, this is what a good person does. This is what a good mom does. This is what a good doctor does. And then so it's really reinforcing. And it's like, who am I if I choose to not carry all of that? Am I being
Mm,
selfish? Am I being a
mm,
jerk? Am I one of those doctors who's burned out, who just doesn't care about people anymore? Right? Like, all of the stuff that we hear. And I think it's important to recognize that as we honor ourselves, everyone is better. I truly believe this. Everyone is better when physicians are well, and as we honor and set down what's not ours to carry, it allows other people and systems to carry what theirs to carry. It's a beautiful act of love toward ourselves and what we're here to do. And it allows us to really get clear on our how we want to spend this short life that we have here, and how we want to share
mm.
our times and our time and our talents. There's such clarity to it as well.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a story that a woman texted me a couple months after the Brave Enough conference, and I did not know who was on the other side of this text. I'm sure this happens to you too. Sometimes I get text messages and I don't actually know who's texting me.
Yeah.
and but it was amazing because it didn't matter who was texting me, because the story was that she had wanted to set down a role at work that she had been doing for 15 years or such, and take on a very different thing in her life and really make a big pivot in her career. But she didn't want to disappoint her partner, who she had worked with for almost 20 years. They had gone through training together, and he was like her, work husband, so to speak. And he was her co-lead in this big program. And every time she would think of stepping back, she would think of disappointing him. And she finally said, after the conference, I, did this little exercise that you had taught us from the stage on what is this thing that we need to let go of and lay down. And it was this. And she said, I was so afraid to have this conversation. And when I had the conversation with him, it was fine. It was like no big deal. And we just went back to work like nothing had happened. And that night, she said she was reflecting, and she said, I have been putting off my life for what I thought someone else was going to be disappointed in me about. That wasn't even actually true. And I bring this story up because I think sometimes the narrative that we've told ourselves is often even more limiting than the narrative someone else has told us. And when we really think about walking ourselves home, and what that, I love the subtitle of your book. Like, we have to also take a little bit of responsibility sometimes, and asking ourselves, like, what is the story that I'm telling myself? And how is that keeping me perhaps in a place of overfunctioning or doing too much and carrying things that I shouldn't carry? And the answer to that has to be in self-compassion, because if we shame ourselves into change, or we shame ourselves into letting things down, it never works, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it never works out for us. But when we accept that self-compassion and that ownership, and we take accountability for maybe some stories we've been holding on to about
Mhm.
ourselves, there's a beautiful transformation on the other end of it.
I think you've said that very well, and I absolutely agree. And that's why when I spoke about developing that self-awareness and seeing how it shows up in our thoughts and our feelings and our in our bodies and in our behaviors, like turning toward that with some awareness, even if it's 1 minute at work.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an hour sitting under the Bodhi tree, right? It's like you
Right.
can just in 1 minute, it's like, well, what's showing up for me? Oh, my jaw is really tight right now. Or I'm like feeling stressed. I'm in this sympathetic arousal. And it's like, okay, what's that about? Getting that curious state of like, okay, what's going on here? Oh, I don't want to disappoint that person. Right? Or whatever it might be. I have so many physicians share with me, if I don't do it, then no one will.
Mm,
And specifically in a work setting where they're really in a setting that's not sustainable, but they care so much about their patients. It's like, oh, but this patient needs it, and if I don't do it, no one will. And therefore, they're volunteering their time and nights and weekends to get the charting done. It's like, okay, well, there you have another 10 or 15 or 20 hours of your personal life so that you can be doing what the patients need. So it just shows up in so many different ways for women in medicine. And I think that even if we make changes, just the tiniest little micro change, it's that 1% better is really matters. We don't have to do it all. We don't
absolutely.
have to blow everything up. Just the tiniest little tweak, and then you adjust, and then you might look again. It's like, well, what is another 1% better I'm going to work on, or I want to learn about. And I think that is often how we move um, through this natural development and growth that we have across the span of our careers and our lives. You mentioned being in your 50s.
Uh-huh.
Congratulations. I have to say,
Thank you.
no one told me, and I didn't know this. I didn't know to expect it. The 50s are the best. Like
Oh, they are the best. I
I
mean,
thought
I'm
earlier was
loving being 50.
they are the best. I had no idea. They're absolutely a blast, and I'm excited for you.
Thank you. And it's so, if you're listening and you're approaching 50 or you're in your 50s and you ever have the thought like, I can't do this, I missed the boat, or I'm too old for this, I promise you that is not the case. If you actually look at some of the most successful people in the world, whether it's in business or whether it's in industry or whether it's tech or science, most people don't even peak in their careers until their 50s, or they invent things. More people invent things in their 50s than any other age. So, like, get excited because it's actually awesome. I'm like, nobody told me that this was going to be a really cool decade. Like, I'm like super pumped to be here. So, thank you for that. Okay, Kathy, you do so many things and you have so many great offerings. I would love for you to leave our listeners with one truth from your work and then tell people how they can follow you.
One truth from my work. I think, well, there's so many. And I think for right today, I would simply say that whatever they are going through, whatever they are experiencing, that might feel great or it might feel miserable or everything in between, to just know that they're not alone in that, that there are other women in medicine who the details may be different, but we are all in this together. And um, there's nothing in our human condition that we are the only ones experiencing. And so with that, knowing that we just can reach out and hold hands and stick together. And I think that that is just so important. It can be hard to do that. It can, we need to be vulnerable and it takes time and all of that. But I do think that that is, we are such social creatures. And I do think that sometimes when we're struggling, or we're just busy, it can be hard to prioritize that connection and make the effort and sustain the effort and do what is required. But I do think that it makes life so much better and so much more joyful. And so I guess that would be one message I'd say for your listeners, is that none of us are in this alone. We're all in here together. And when someone wins, we all win. We all rise. We like, that is what this life is about. And so reach out, hold hands, stick together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Such a good message. And it's so true. We all like to think we can heal alone and we figure things out alone, but we know that that's not the case. We need each other. We need community to grow, to
Mm.
learn, and just to make it through. So, thank you for that beautiful ending. Can you tell us how women that are listening can find you, follow you, learn about all of the offerings?
Yes, probably the best way to do that is to go directly to the website. So the Institute for Physician Wellness is what I have my offerings through. So it's www.instituteforphysicianwellness.com, and there they will find all of the things. And there's links to follow me on all the social media stuff as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I hope that if you were listening, you remember to get that time for self awareness, whether it's 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Really get curious, as Kathy told us and taught us today. And then thinking about self compassion and self acceptance. Have an amazing day, everybody.